Welcome, everyone. My name is Danny Smith. I'm with Davie County GIS, and today I'll be focusing on a project with our environmental health department, and it integrates ArcGIS Enterprise Portal and field maps. Um, so, really, just wanted to go over a few, foundational components here to just lay out the framework for it. So, of course, we have a support vendor with a Vinion who provides awesome support for us, and we also partnered with EOS or are using EOS Aero units as a component of this, and of course, our environmental health department being in health and human services. It's really you can just break apart the title of this, and there were feats to overcome with each combination of different words in the title there. Especially when you talk about integrating non-GIS departments with GIS, it can be challenging and rewarding. So here we go. So a broad overview of the project. Main objective to identify, collect, and standardize data for environmental health inspections. And really, also a focus of it was to simplify their processes, to really squeeze out as much data as you can in the hours that they can allocate to being out in the field, whether they're assessing an existing property, anything from existing septic tanks to distribution boxes, or perhaps a new development is going in, subdivisions and whatnot. And so producing site maps as a part of their process, when someone comes in and they're building a subdivision, they will apply for permits, as many of you know, and a part of that process is providing locations and underground and above ground asset maps, just to pinpoint any potential flaws in the groundwork. And so, the first question for us was, what kind of GIS do we need? How and what data is going to be collected? And importantly, as if you work directly with GIS data, where's that data going to live? How's it going to be accessed? Who's going to be reaching it? And importantly, especially, before any budgets needed to be submitted, what hardware is needed? Are there any aspects of the current GIS infrastructure that need to be addressed before taking on a potentially large and growing data set? So what data are we collecting? And this was sort of it's sort of like the pinnacle of complexity working with a non-GIS department, is getting them to think in a GIS sort of way. So they're experts. They know what data they're collecting, everything that they've seen, and details about that data. So really getting them to think about, okay, is it a septic tank? All right, let's think about that as a point. And, what data do you need to acquire about this septic tank? Okay, there we have our domains. And really standardizing typologies and nomenclature, so that can become, sort of this foundation moving forward. Because it can, and it has, but, we've gotten much better with it, but it got murky, changing terminology, changing domains, things like that. But it's just the nature of the beast, especially in the beginning phases of the project. And importantly, for everyone involved, how can we keep it simple? And this kind of goes back to the first step, where the data is going to live. So they needed to access this through field maps because, they wanted to be out in the field, and they'll have their phones and their tablets and GPS units collecting data, and they need concurrent editing. Okay, so how can we best manage this? So we decided on branch versioning, and it works really well. It works directly with Enterprise Portal. So you create your branch versioned database, and we decided to create a separate database for this. Of course, just to keep things separate between our traditionally versioned SCE data and this new data set. And so some of the benefits there in branch versioning, working directly with portal data, and it's especially beneficial for them, especially because one person might go to site A and another person at site B, and then they switch sites in the afternoon. Maybe they're collecting different things, but it makes concurrent editing really smooth and effortless. And it's much easier to maintain editing users. I can just maintain those directly in Portal, and it keeps that simple. And of course, as many of you know, if you've ever worked with field maps makes it really easy, especially once you get into sort of conditional formatting with different fields. So limiting the fields that not only they have to fill out, but the fields that they see, just to really standardize and expedite that process. And this one, had its pros and cons, but standardizing symbology and labeling. And again, as some of you may know, developing something in Pro and then publishing it in Portal or ArcGIS Online doesn't always necessarily mean that you'll get what you published. So we're still experimenting with that. And then perhaps most importantly, what's the end product? What is the big the big achievement that they want from using field maps and adding and editing and maintaining all this GIS data? Well, they want site maps. They need maps to attach to permits, and as a part of the permitting process, they can attach the unique ID that they need to their forms, and it really has sped up their data collection and processing times, which has been great. And also, especially not only for them, but for GIS folks, high precision asset location. So I'll get into sort of the equipment that we're using here in a little bit. Moving along. So as I was alluding to earlier, what GIS configuration is needed. We have our GIS server, of course. We work with SQL. So really explaining to them what their data was going to live in, really helped them visualize how to think about the data. And it really got the ball rolling on, identifying what they really needed to collect, because honestly, they can collect anything under the sun if it's on the property and it affects any sort of assessment or value. So getting them to think about the geodatabase in that fashion definitely helped out. We work with Portal 10.9, and initially we had them working out of a web map application. And of course, that works directly with field maps. And then we also, they decided on the EOS Area 100 Plus, sub-meter accuracy, and it really varies on different, where you are, satellite coverage, cloud coverage, forested areas, things like that. But it's been really great so far. And they work primarily with iPhones and tablets. And ArcGIS Pro, this has been a really good way for me to start introducing Pro to GIS users here on a local government level. We still have a lot of folks using ArcMap, which is totally fine. It definitely has its advantages. But So they started out using Pro because they can consume that data from Portal directly, and they've really learned to customize their maps and attach those to permits. So definitely won't go over all this. Just trying to uh, really take a look at how large and vast the data can be, or it might seem at first, but it, and that was sort of the process in the beginning was sitting down in a room, have a massive dry erase board, and writing things down. And eventually, it simmered down and dissolved into just a few different classes here. So point types, line types, and polygon types is what we wanted to do. So these are our main feature classes here. And then, of course, getting them to think about domains and sort of listed values. They began to name off things like auger borings, pits, things like that. And then especially with conditional formatting and fill maps, it makes all this data entry really smooth. All right, so attempt to convey how we kept it simple here. Not too complicated, but so starting out with ArcGIS Pro here, create the feature classes, enable branch versioning, attachments, editor tracking, and customizing the symbology and publishing to Portal. And we did want to keep it in a separate container than our standard vector and raster data, of course. And then consuming that data in Enterprise Portal. And again, this makes just sort of managing all these users very easy and limiting to that content in Portal. And in collaboration with environmental health, configuring a base map. That was a big part of the process too. What all do they need to see by default? Everything from hydrology to elevation, tax parcel information, things like that. And moving on to field maps and the arrow unit. So again, configuring smart forms with that conditional visibility really simplified the data collection process, and syncing the arrow GNSS units with their mobile devices and working directly in field maps and Portal. And then, of course, consuming the data. So, this is an interesting thing that sort of evolved over the past 6 months. So they were primarily consuming data in a web map application, and through a custom print widget, they could print an area that they're focusing on, or they could access that in Pro. And so, it's pretty tricky getting what you want out of a web app application compared to Pro. There's just a lot more functionality, especially when you're talking about map customization, print templates. Essentially, if you change any data in their original web map, it could very well break that custom print widget, and it's a whole process. But they've really moved to Pro to consume the data, which is great. And this means that they can really customize it to their choosing. And so let's see, I'll get into a little case study here off of Tennyson Lane. So it runs parallel with I-40 here in Davie County. So if you're driving on I-40 and you see a small airplane trying to land, it's probably trying to land right here. There's a private airstrip being built. I don't know if you can see that. It's probably small. But it's basically this little mini Disney World type area. I mean, he has everything from barndominiums for guests, different shooting ranges, balloon launch area. So I thought this would be a fun case study. But as you can see here, this is sort of an initial offering of what the resident was applying for, what he needed from environmental health. So there's a lot of stuff here, different barndominium lots. And of course, they're focusing on the structure, any existing wells, they're digging pits. And here's a couple of field workers out there enjoying the sunshine. And now I'll sort of take you to that application. And so this is that same area off of I-40. And so as you can see here, they've really done a lot of work here. I mean, it took them, I don't know, at least a week, with the especially with the pits and the excavators and all that good stuff. But you can see here that they've really laid out a bunch of data. And here's the structure for a building footprint. And of course, they, taking a lot of point locations. And it looks like this one is I believe it's a septic tank site. Yeah. So, and this is a really great way for them to document what's underground. Not only that, but I believe they're taking notes of the manufacturer and the installation date, which I don't know if any of you have ever had any issues with your septic tank, but it's nice to know where exactly it is, so you can access it. And so they're able to take photographs with that, of course. That's been really useful, and that's going to help. That's going to help me, maintaining septic site points in the county, because up to this point, it's been they're being associated with address points, so they're not actually locations of the assets themselves. So here you can see it again. And I just wanted to show environmental health folks this as well. This is like sort of what your data is doing right now. And they can access this at any time without going back to the field. And so they can also get metrics, which I believe they ran some before budgets were proposed for the upcoming fiscal year, just to get an idea of the majority of assets that they're identifying, that they're finding, and it gives, from a GIS database standpoint, outside of file storage, gives us an idea of what's in the actual data. And of course, you can go by created user, which I really like. Maybe someone's getting sick of collecting PID data, and they'll move to property corners or building footprints. And I thought this would be a fun little thing. So, before I was going through some old site maps, just to get an idea of how data was collected in the past, what data was collected in the past. And, some is more useful than others. I mean, it's no knock on anyone. I mean, they were going out with a clipboard and a piece of paper and sketching it out as quickly as they could so they can move on to the next site. But, you can see there could be some confusion on what's what. I mean, if you've looked at them enough, then, you can kind of figure it out. But, I thought this was a great way for us to explore how to not only improve the maps, but differences in map creation between using Enterprise Portal and printing in our GIS Pro. And I was sort of noting this earlier, but so we provided them with custom print templates in our enterprise portal, and it really has its limitations. It really works well with small properties with a few features on it, but when you're looking at properties with over 25 features, I mean, it gets crowded and it's not really displaying information well. Um, so that's when they decided that they would just move to Pro, because they can really not only change, they can resolve labeling conflicts, which was a big component of that transition. Because you can set labeling conflict resolution options in Pro and publish that custom print widget to Portal, but those properties aren't kept, at least to my knowledge. So some of the pros in Portal: quick export to PDF, URL access, and dynamic legend, scaling and date. The cons, again, labeling conflicts, map extent conflicts, and it's less customizable. But printing in Pro, overlapping was a big conflict resolution perk there, and just a lot more control over the maps. And yeah, coming up, so I'm going to offer some more extensive training for them in ArcGIS Pro. And so I believe this summer, we're going to look sort of at all the data they've collected, and really assess what is needed, what can be improved, and especially, we have an entire polygon feature class that they can use, but they barely use it. They prefer the lines because you can get actual line distances as opposed to, you can get the area, of course, for a polygon, but they just prefer the lines. So, just little things like that we've learned along the way that we'll address, and eventually a GIS dashboard for them to view different areas and view statistics for data they've collected. And that's the end. Are there any questions, comments?
Thanks, Danny. We did have a comment in the chat. I believe Gregory had said we've had some ArcMap users use QGIS for their analysis as well, since they can consume data directly.
Nice. Yeah. We've been looking at QGIS. Actually, someone over there in environmental health was looking at open source GIS, and that's something that we plan to take another look at in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I had a question as well. Just it looks like it might be your next move here with the improved data entry fields. Have you guys looked at attribute rules and contingent values, that kind of thing, for just improving like how quickly the data can be entered and some of that data quality, or is that part of your coming up?
Yeah. So, and I really started looking at attribute rules I was working on another project with someone at Avidion, and she really works with attribute rules, and she was doing a couple things to some data, and I asked, well, what are you doing there? It's still a fairly new thing to me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but it seems fascinating, and it seems that it could prevent headaches in the future.
Totally.
Yeah, really just smooth over a lot of the data entry.
Yeah, I think too, it just gives, like, it can make things so much faster as well. Like, if there are relationships between the different attributes that you're entering, it can just can save some time. I know we had a project at DOT where we implemented attribute rules and contingent values, and it was a lot to work through all of the logic, but it has cut down the data entry time just so much.
Right. And and also going back to the previous presentation, talking about authoritative data. So this has come up in Portal, because of course you can set, different data sets as authoritative in ArcGIS Online Portal. So I had there was an error with one of the data sets that they were working with, and well, fast forwarding, now we have that authoritative badge on these three main data sets that they work with, just because sometimes third-party data is introduced, and it really just creates a better stronghold on that data. So it's not as easily, it's not confused with any third-party data, which is basically what we wanted. And especially, as many of you know, subdivisions are popping up. So this process has definitely helped them out, and that authoritative badge has become really useful.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to this how, it would be so helpful in Wake County to have some of that septic field data in my everyday workflows, because, we have road widenings that come through and proposed water lines that are now in conflict with these septic fields. And a lot of times we don't have those maps. So getting that data is great on your side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Righty. Did anyone else have any questions or comments for Danny? All right. Thanks so much. That was fantastic. It was really great too to just see all of the different components, in terms of just technology infrastructure that support that workflow, from the database right to the user. Thanks so much, Danny.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.